How you doing? My name is Vincent Faney. I am the producer, the director, and the host of the show, Insanity Unplugged. This show was first featured and premiered a couple years prior to the pandemic on CTV, or otherwise known as Community TV of Lane County. And Lane County is one of the counties in Oregon, and soon my videos, I'm back with CTV, producing shows for CTV, and also these shows will be shown in other public access TV stations. Actually, I'm going to get them, I'm submitting them worldwide through my YouTube channel, also called Vinsanity Unplugged. It's soon to be on Spotify, and I will gravitate more heavily towards those streaming video outlets that are very keen on allowing their producers to have absolute free speech. As you know, a lot of the social media outlets do a lot of censoring. Sometimes it seems without apparent reason or cause. And I would feel safer about being transparent and doing my work on those outlets that allow for free speech. Anything short of insurrection, at least, right? So anyways, this book I'm talking about is my first book that I wrote. Actually, it's the first writings, because I was encouraged by my therapist when I was going through some harsh times at the United States Postal Service, where I worked at the Gateway facility in Eugene, Springfield area. Got involved in a nasty lawsuit. After years of trying to avoid suing, a bunch of us were very ill prior to realizing that the environment at work was causing us to be ill. And by the advice of the Postal Service's own hazmat person, a specialist, who was also their leading industrial hygienist, he basically told us all that once, because the high-speed machines were coming in, that's why even more people were becoming sick. 75% of the people at the plant wrote a list. They put their name to the list, citing why they've been becoming sick, chronically ill with lung infections and sinus infections, and of course they had to take sick leave, which is something that management penalized people heavily to do, even though it was our right to take sick. So there's always an issue, even though it was written in a contract that you have a right to be sick, call in sick if you're sick, and that's up to your doctor and you to determine if it's, you were sick. But postal management, government management being what they were, especially our local management, would harass people every time they called in sick. And plus there's the fact that a lot of people don't like taking their sick leave, because your sick leave is like money in the bank. It's an insurance policy, so you try to be very jealously guard and not use your sick leave, because in the event as you get older, if you develop some sort of disease that happens to many people as they get older, or some sort of unexpected disability where you need to take massive amounts of time off, it's nice to have that sick leave. The people who burned it up and developed some pretty daunting diseases or disabilities found themselves still on the postal roster, but no money coming in because they didn't have the sick leave to pay for their time off. And that's not a space anybody should ever be. They should avoid getting themselves in that space at all costs. So there's a lot of fear. And not only did these people put on the list that they were suffering, but they also were petitioning for OSHA to come in. So anyways, that's what happened, and that's why I was, forced to go to a therapist to keep from going postal. I didn't be like one of the guys that overheard in a prior conversation a few years earlier, who were so hateful to a particular tour supervisor that was infamously known as the pig poker. That was a nickname given to him. And there was such hatred for this guy that some of these bitter, old guard postal workers who had known each other and trusted each other and were hateful to us newbies, they were overheard them conspiring to murder, to coordinate an assassination of this one supervisor. And I believe that the supervisor had not transferred to Eastern Oregon, that he would indeed be murdered outside of work. It terrified me to hear that. And then I found myself being a person forced in a situation, not that where I was going to murder people, but I was plotting heavily in my mind, wondering how I get stalked down. 25 people, roughly, some of them high-ranking union officials, some of them in management. And I was considering being a part, I was considering planning on figuring out ways how I could cripple these people permanently. Because I was, you know, I spiraled into some sort of mental illness. I was enraged that my coworkers and my friends would be targeted to where they could not protect themselves, and a couple of these friends died from respiratory infections because certain individuals, not the Postal Service at the top, certain individuals where I worked conspired to target us. And then then they got the rest of the Postal Service and people in management to back up their play. Anyways, the therapist encouraged me to start writing about my life story from my earliest memories, both good and bad, but they had to be significant life-influencing memories. And I was to relive those experiences and use my the watcher part of me, the adult part of me, to give myself permission to forgive myself, or to, you know, tell the inner child you were wrong and this is what you should have done, and the way you reacted was a little bit inappropriate, over the top, or you overreacted with too much guilt, too much anger, too much feelings of anxiety or helplessness. So it was very cathartic to write about all this. And initially I wrote everything down. Some of the early writing seemed childish or immature for two reasons. One, I was unskilled, inexperienced as a writer. Two, I really did at the time while I was writing tap into the inner child, so much of the vernacular and the wording and the syntax is that of more of a child. And that become more adult-like as the memories as I grew older. And of course it was done in, like I said, a Jack Webb. These are the facts, ma'am, just the facts. And then I decided, since my writing was all that I had after losing everything, I thought I could present these as their true stories, present them in a way with a little bit of humor, as a cautionary tale with lots of humor, and to not embellish, but to add color and feeling and emotion of the traumas that I was faced with, of the confusion and so forth. So they went from being just basically like a transcript to, you know, I constantly relived and put in the emotions I had felt. So quite a few people, even though the writing is not at the skill level of Scott Fitzgerald and John Steinbeck, a lot of people enjoy the stories, or it's heartfelt for them. Some people find certain stories will make them cry. Certain stories will make them laugh. Some people, will read a story and say, "You are one strange mofo." Okay, so the first book that I wrote takes the reader from the time I took certain liberties, because my earliest memory was when I was perhaps a little over a year, right around a year old, and it was more of a memory of visual senses and sensations and touch and so forth, because I was not really thinking. I just remember the animal reflex of need and so forth. That's the earliest memory. But I took some artistic license and talk about my preconception, And the book goes from the preconception all the way till I turned 16 and went into the Marine Corps. So the first book is a series of four or five books that I wrote. Basically, from the time I went from birth to the Marines. The Marine Corps, Adventures Marine Corps book is a standalone book that I was using specifically to raise money to get body armor for troops who did not have body armor. And then the next one of the series of the One Primate in Search of Intelligent Life, One Primate Search for Intelligent Life, basically, and that was subtitle Most People Talk Bullshit, with a subtitle Genesis, the first of the series, Genesis. And the second one was the same title, and that was, Exodus. And basically, or Exodus 1, okay? And so that was from the time I came out of the Marine Corps, Talked about my struggles, my poverty, my homelessness, you know, all the adventures and misadventures that a young guy who's overly concerned about chasing girls and lifting weights, trying to find my way in the world and develop meaning. Be somebody more than somebody who is just interested in satiating carnal desires, and take on more meaningful goals instead of just surviving and you know, living, right? Just regular, the way most people live. They go to work, they fornicate every Thursday with their wife if it's scheduled, and they eat, they raise kids, and they train their kids, or don't train their kids. The kids become the same way, and they floss their teeth, and they watch baseball or football, and maybe they lift weights because they want to be buff, and that's it. I want it to be more than that. And I talk about my struggles and my goals towards becoming more spiritual, and trying various ways, indirect ways of trying to get to know God, to get to know our Creator or creation, to have some sort of relationship with God, but not in the conventional Judeo-Christian religious method. So that book takes you to the time until I decide to move from Pennsylvania, from Philly, to move to Oregon. And of course the next book is the story from my time of moving to Oregon, traveling around the country, getting odd jobs here and there, coming to Oregon and opening my gym and having the full gym experience as a gym owner, as a coach, and so forth. And then of course the next series of the book was when I got, from the time I got a job at the post office till the time I was embroiled in this postal issue. But I didn't just talk about the postal issue. Obviously I had a life outside the post office. So the third book in the series talks about everything: the gym experience, the postal experience, the outside of my postal experience, my life experience, is still trying to grow and become an actualized human being. Of course, I separated the book, the story. It was a year of me being an owner of a gym, and it was filled with so many colorful characters that it was almost like these people were right out of a sitcom of Cheers and Taxi and some other sitcom that basically would present various quirky, dysfunctional people. Our life around us, people are so dysfunctional and quirky, so there's a lot of material out there. And then the next in the series of the One Primate Search for Intelligent Life was after Revelations, because it became it had this revelation of what was happening at the post office, that things were not going to end in a good way. And then the next book went from my trials and tribulations of fighting the United States Postal Service and dealing with the Justice Department and dealing with investigators and other law enforcement spooks and criminal element and all this stuff, trying to survive and force my way back to work to get enough time that I could retire when I'm forced to retire early, which I was. So a lot of people like those stories. Now, out of the series of the One Primate Search for Intelligent Life, the only one that I present so far is the first one. Why I have the entire story written down on the other three books, it needs to be edited. It needs to be cleaned up. It's all right now in manuscripts. It needs to be further polished for public consumption. So that's pretty much. I write about the first one, about the trials and tribulations of seeing my parents get divorced, seeing my relatives, how they interacted, my Sicilian Italian side of the family, my poor, what some people call poor white trash sharecropper side of the family, dealing with the civil rights movement, observing that as a child, and not understanding why people were racist, because I thought that was irrational, not understanding why people who were gay were considered monstrous deviants of society. I couldn't understand that, even though I'm heterosexual. I just like, wow, I saw a lot of things that were irrational and something that confused me as a child, and I'm trying to make sense of the whole thing. And then as being a person who is like a loner and not having friends and being bullied and experiencing poverty, experiencing gut-wrenching hunger as a kid, and going, feeling compelled to go out and forage for food and eating raw shellfish and bugs and everything else. And then, of course, the budding, the puberty, the onset of puberty, and what that does. It's like the pon farr that Spock and the Vulcans go under. You just basically start losing your rational mind, and it's no longer easy, even for those like me who were highly called to intellectual pursuit of reading books all the time. I found I couldn't even study. I couldn't even focus on a simple sentence like "see the dog run, 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 run." I was too busy being consumed for my desire to chase girls, and accidentally I became a notable athlete, and the type of popularity that all of a sudden is thrusted at me was a bit overwhelming, and I did not handle that well. So, it's a cautionary tale. It gives people hopefully insights, and later when I dealt with at-risk teens, teenagers that had addictions and mental illnesses and familial problems, and they were the final stop before they would be forced into either juvenile detention hall, lockdown, or even a prison. I got to deal with them and share a lot of my life stories and what I learned, and as cautionary tales like "don't do this, that's what I did, that was stupid, that'll put, oh, you already did do that, don't do it again," and give them some insights on how I was able to circumvent or to grow from that and no longer be that dysfunctional person. Not saying I'm still dysfunctional in some ways, of course, we're all flawed, always a work in process, but I was able to share with these kids. I knew where they came from, so that was helpful for them. To learn that we have so many potential tools at our disposal, regardless of what age we are, that we can become fully actualized, transcendent beings. Anyways, again, I hope you enjoy this book, and just know that the proceeds will go to helping to acquire affordable housing for people, organizations specifically, to operate these houses that will help to house the people that are suited to be housed, need to be housed. So follow me on Facebook on Walk with Insanity for affordable housing. Follow me on Instagram. You can follow me on Twitter. You can follow me on my channel on YouTube, which is also titled Insanity Unplugged. I have a WordPress blog I got to get back to and update, also called Insanity Unplugged. And leave comments, leave emojis, subscribe, follow, and please, 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 please share. Share. Sharing really helps. Share to everybody that you know will not be offended by you sharing. If the people you know don't want you to share to their page, share a messenger and say, here's something you might want to look at, you might want to post, you might want to share. You might want to read some of these guys' books. Check it out. So I'll also be putting together with some friends some CDs, DVDs of our comedy shows that we'll be doing to raise money for many of these wonderful organizations. All right. Thank you for your time. Have a blessed day, blessed week, blessed life. Bye.